1993, three 8-year-old boys were brutally murdered in a small town in eastern Arkansas. There is evidence the killings may have been part of a satanic ritual, but much about this awful case remains unclear. Today we'll try to solve the remaining puzzle with the cooperation of experts and family members from both the young victim's side and the side of the teenaged accused. Pam and Terry are the parents of Stevie Hobbs. Stevie, one of the 8-year-old boys, brutally murdered. Jackie is the victim's grandfather. I know it's difficult, Pam, but can you describe the wounds on Stevie's body?
The left side of his face was cut and mutilated. He was tied hand and foot, and he had injuries to his head where his brain had scattered when they hit him.
Essentially, he was beaten to death?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us your reaction, Terry, when you heard what had happened to your stepson.
I don't know, I couldn't believe it. Went into shock. Maybe in shock now. You know, I still can't believe it. It's like a long nightmare that you keep waiting to wake up from. And we're here in the middle of it.
Joining us via satellite from West Memphis, Arkansas, is the father of one of the three teenaged accused. Actually, his son has already been convicted of murdering the three 8-year-olds. This is Jessie Misskelley Jr. He's joined by some supporters you can see in the background. Before I talk to that side and this much more deeply about what happened, you should know that this story of the murders of the three young boys has taken many bizarre twists and turns. Indeed, new revelations are emerging every single day. Our team visited West Memphis, Arkansas to investigate. Here's the story of the three dead young men. Reminiscing over children's photos brings joy to most families. But in the house of Marie Hicks and her daughter Pam Hobbs, it is a painful and torturous event. Pam's 8-year-old son Stephen was sexually molested and brutally murdered, along with two other 8-year-old boys, Michael Moore and Christopher Byers. It happened in West Memphis, Arkansas on May 5th, 1993. Christopher had also been castrated. Charged in the brutal murders were three local teenagers: Jessie Misskelley Jr., 18, Damien Echols, 18, and Jason Baldwin, just 16. The parents of one of the murdered boys yelled at Damien on his way to a court appearance.
Hey, faggot! What you look like, a faggot?
Adding to the parents' horrors were reports that the killers had participated in devil worship. On February 4th, Jessie Misskelley Jr. was found guilty of the murders. He was sentenced to life in prison, plus 40 years. The trials of Damien Echols and Jason Baldwin are scheduled for late February. In June of last year, 1993, the Memphis Commercial Appeal reported that cult experts had warned West Memphis officials back in 1992 that satanic cult activities were present in the community. One of the three defendants told West Memphis police that local cult activities included eating dogs and participating in sex orgies. Acquaintances of Damien Echols told reporters that Echols customarily wore black, killed cats, and worshipped the devil. Stephanie Dollar, a West Memphis resident, said there has long been talk about cult activities in West Memphis.
I mean, all the talk about it, I mean, the symbols that you see wrote everywhere. I mean, which it could be just kids writing things, I don't know. I mean, but there's just too much talk about it for it not to be true.
Jessie Misskelley Jr., like his two co-defendants, lived in a rundown trailer park in the West Memphis area. The teenager's room revealed nothing extraordinary. Most of the pictures and posters were fairly typical for an 18-year-old boy's room. Although a jury found his son guilty, Jessie Misskelley Sr. steadfastly professes his son's innocence.
I've got 15, 20 people that saw him out here in this trailer park that day, up until 7:30. Then he went to Dallas, Arkansas to wrestle. There's no way he could have been up there to kill those boys. He was out here in this trailer park because they have witnesses to prove that he was here. But the police, they say he was not here. And they got up there and lied Jessie was not in that. Because it said eat the hind leg of a dog. Jessie won't eat fried chicken. What are you talking about?
Jessie Sr.'s story is supported by 15-year-old Susie Brewer, Jessie Jr.'s girlfriend.
I think they're stupid. I don't think he did it. I just tell him I still love him and we're all behind him. Damien's weird looking and Jason, he's just quiet.
Police believe the murders occurred in a small grove known by the locals as Robin Hood Woods. It's a popular spot for teenage beer drinking and parties. Based on police and news reports, we have recreated the boys' final moments. Late afternoon on May 5th, 1993, the boys entered the woods. One was riding a girl's bike, the other a boy's bike. The third child had a skateboard. It is believed the boys spent some time roaming and playing in the woods. At some point, however, after 6 p.m., the three children and their assailants met. The following day, May 6th, the police spotted a young boy's sneaker and a Cub Scout hat floating in a small creek. The bodies of the three boys were found just yards away.
Pam, can you tell us what happened that afternoon? What happened to your son? What was he usually doing at that time?
After school, Michael had come over and asked could Stevie go to his house and play.
Michael
At
Moore,
first
one of the three victims, yeah.
Sir, yeah, to Michael Moore's house, the other little boy. And at first I told him no, and he kept begging, so I went ahead and told him that he could go, and I gave him a time to be home. I told him to be home by 4:30, that if he wasn't home, he would be grounded. And I had to go to work that night, and I left for work around 4:55, and he still wasn't at home. So I went on to work, and my husband started searching for him. And we searched all night, and just it come up the next day that he was dead.
Who told you that they found his body?
My husband and I went to the school to check to tell them that we hadn't found the boys, and a lady said, I heard they just found 3 boys. So we went to the part where they had found them at, and I run up. They already had the police line out and everything, and I run up, and someone said that it was Stevie, that it was the boys.
Grandpa Jackie, do you believe this was a devil worship cult? Do you believe this was a satanic organization, or these boys were in some way connected? And how do you respond to that?
Yes, I definitely believe that it was. At the time of the murders, Satanic was a world of its own. It was something that wasn't even in my mind. But as time progresses and goes on, and we've learned a little more, studied a little more, and went along with it, at all points from what we've read and studied, yes, it was a Satanic type murder.
What's your reaction? I know you folks are nervous about being on TV. What's your reaction to what happened to your grandson?
Well, him and a couple little boys were just beautiful little boys playing. Those little boys still believe in Santa Claus and the Easter bunnies. They were playing in the woods called Robin Hood Park, where all the neighborhood kids play at. And evidently they've run up on something. And those boys were cruelly beaten to death. They were beaten to death. I saw my grandson at the funeral home before he was taken out of a body bag, just like he came back from the corner. And it was pitiful.
Tell us. Help us understand that. What did they do to him?
What did they do to him? His jaw was completely tore loose from his face. His eye was busted in the socket. His chest and all was kicked and stomped. His face was kicked and stomped. It's just pitiful, pitiful. It's something that a decent human being wouldn't even do to a live dog, let alone a human being.
Did a feeling of rage swell up in you?
Well, naturally, you know, the feeling of rage swollen up. Yes, it's swollen out. Yeah, he did.
Did you want to go out and find his murderers yourself?
Naturally, you know that too. Yes, I did want to go out and find these murderers myself at the time.
Do you believe that the right teenager was convicted?
Yes, I do.
Jessie Misskelley Sr., can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
You still, despite the fact that a jury has convicted your son and sentenced him to life plus 40 years, you believe him to be innocent?
Yes, sir, I sure do.
Isn't it a fact that Jessie Misskelley Jr. was a member of one of these satanic cults?
No, he was not.
He didn't attend meetings?
No, he did not.
There was testimony to that effect at the trial?
That's a lie.
Do you think everyone is lying about your son?
Yes, I do.
And you believe that he had an alibi?
I know he did.
Then why did he make a 32-minute confession to the cops?
Because they hounded him, they cussed him, they threatened him, and he just made a statement to get him off his back.
Terry, you want to say something to Mr. Misskelley Sr.?
I have a lot to say to that man, but I don't want to talk to him. I don't appreciate the action of your son. He come out of your home, out of your raisins. And no, I don't have.
Well, my son did not do it.
He said he did.
But he's mistaken.
He had
they
a
made him
chance
say
to tell the whole world he didn't do it, and he
We
didn't.
tried.
He didn't.
We tried.
He didn't. He had a chance.
We tried, but they wouldn't let him.
Paul Morrison is a television reporter who got so close to this case that he became almost obsessed with it. So much so that he was forced to quit his job in a Memphis television station. Paul, what about the satanic angle here? Were these boys ritually slaughtered?
So far, we've heard nothing from the police, certainly. They did not establish motive in the killings. As you know, you don't need to establish motive for a conviction. But publicly, there's been no mention that the motive of these killings was cult-related.
What else could it have been?
I think when you look at a case like this, some of the questions that might go through your mind would be child sexual abuse, or if the motivator was indeed sexual as opposed to cult-related. I cannot say for sure it was or it wasn't. I do know this much. You've already indicated, I'm convinced there was a cult of some form or fashion alive and well in West Memphis, Arkansas.
Isn't it a fact that aside from the brutal beating that they administered to these 3 8-year-olds, that they also castrated one of the boys?
Christopher Byers' sexual organs were rather artfully removed. To my knowledge, they've never been found.
Picture this happening in your town. 3 8-year-old boys, wonderful, innocent, Santa Claus believing 8-year-old boys, brutally beaten to death, hacked and mutilated. Later, 3 teenagers arrested, one of them already convicted, the trials of 2 others to take place. What impact would it have in your community, particularly if you learned that there was possibly a satanic cult that these teenagers belonged to? When kids kill kids, did the devil make them do it? The focus of this edition of Geraldo. Kill kids, did the devil make them do it? I want to go back to West Memphis, Arkansas, back to Jessie Misskelley Sr., surrounded, as you can see, by other supporters and family members of the youngster, 17 years old at the time of the crime, now 18 years old, and sentenced to life plus 40 years. Mr. Misskelley Sr., we have one of the victim's grandfathers here. He's a man, I think, who knows you. Jackie, do you want to say something to Jessie?
Yes, Mr. Misskelley, I didn't get a chance to say anything to you after the trial, but what I see, and I'm talking personally to you, I see a repeat of a beer drinking. All I see is what I'm trying to say. It's his raising. I feel sorry for him than I do for you. You've never done nothing for him. And that's all he ever knew, is what he was doing. And brother, that's your fault as much as it's his.
Mr. Misskelley, do you want to respond?
No, they can run me down all they want to, but I don't care what they say. Just leave me the hell alone.
But Mr. Misskelley, isn't it possible, now that your son is convicted, can't you look at this thing a little more objectively? Convicted after a confession? Isn't it possible that he went astray someplace?
No.
Something went wrong with your son?
No. He was coerced in making that station. He was kind of scared. He had the mind of a 7 or 8 year old, and he was scared, and he told them anything he could think of to get him off his back.
And the woman, I believe, Paul, her name was Hutchison?
Victoria Hutchison.
Who testified, Jesse, that your son was at one of these cult meetings, at least one?
She lied.
Why would she lie?
That I don't know.
Paul, how convincing was her testimony?
It was rather brief, but she indicated that she had attended what appeared from the testimony to have been a meeting, a satanic ritual called an SBAT, which in those terms is more or less a monthly or regular business meeting.
Jesse, is your son going to testify against the other two boys, against, what's his name, Damien and Jason?
That I don't know.
Let me introduce our experts, because I want to broaden this beyond West Memphis to talk more about this whole very controversial issue of satanic cults and devil worship. Whenever this is mentioned in polite society, people like to bury their head under the pillow and refuse to believe that it exists. And very often reporters like Paul Morrison get an awful lot of heat for staying with these stories. I know when we did our devil worship special how very controversial that was, but we still stand by that one as well as what you're hearing today. Okay, Dr. Herbert Nyberg, a man who specializes in adolescent Satanism, among many other things. He has been counseling victims and ex-cult members for years. Jack Roper is one of the nation's leading authors and experts on satanic cults. Our old friend Jack Levin, renowned, certainly well-known professor of criminology at Boston's Northeastern University, a man who says Satanism is used as a cop-out and an excuse by troubled, violent teenagers. And finally, a man who knows it from the streets, Marcos Quinones. He's an officer with the good old NYPD, New York City Police Department. He says that more satanic murderers occur than we know about. These four experts, joined by our bereaved relatives on both sides. They are saddened. We'll continue this discussion of when kids kill kids. Did the devil make them do it? Right after this brief intermission. When kids kill kids, did the devil make them do it? Our specific focus, this horrible triple homicide just west of Memphis on the Arkansas side of the river. Yes?
With the occult, I know that there's a history of hallucinogenic use. And was there any such, I guess, tie with that in this murder?
During Jesse's trial, he indicated, or the testimony indicated, that he had had some experience with drugs. I do not know the extent of it. It didn't, and the other two we do not know yet, because basically the case file is sealed.
Jesse Sr., was your son a drug user?
No, not especially. He smoked a little marijuana every once in a while.
Uh-huh. Was he a big boozer?
No, not a big boozer. He did drink whiskey, though.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any more children?
Yeah.
Pam? How old is she?
She just turned 5.
Does she have any understanding of what happened to her brother?
No, she doesn't understand it. She misses her brother, but she doesn't understand. She knows he's gone, and she says she knows he's in heaven, but to really understand it, no, she don't.
Hi. I would like to know what type of person it is that gets involved with cults.
I don't know. Dr. Nyberg, I want to save you for the bigger question of whether you think this is satanic related. I want to ask Jack Roper that question. Is there a typical kid who gets involved?
I think you have to look at an overall view. It can be from all educational perspectives, from those that are real unintelligent, but those that are extremely intelligent, valedictorians. So you have to look at where they're coming from, their background, of the family, how the family treats them, have they been abused. So there's a lot of factors you have to consider with each.
One of the defendants stylized himself Damien after the character in The Omen. It's not his given name, but he calls himself Damien. Is that an indicator of anything to you?
Well, Damien, there's also a well-known church, I mean, there's a Satanic organization, and the leader of that, his AKA is also Damien. I won't bring up his name.
What's the dagger you're holding?
Well, when I point out that this kind of stuff is available, you can go to warehouses, there are occult warehouses in the country where you can buy this kind of stuff.
See the skull on top with the rubies? Okay, what else?
And also now there are cases, active cases and dismissed cases out there, but this is one case of an individual. I have his satanic diary, his Book of Shadows, and this individual was sent threatening letters to President Carter. The U.S. Secret Service was involved with this case. I also have another one where an individual who's in prison right now in Massachusetts, he sent me a letter to get some information on Satanism, but he was also, according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, said here that he was involved with a decapitation, and killing and mutilation.
Oh,
yes.
brother. Let me go to Dr. Nyberg. Does what happened in West Memphis smack of Satanism to you?
It's a crime that's associated with Satanism. This is not a typical satanic crime. Typical satanic murder, one would expect as part of a ritual. You would expect an altar. You would expect certain kinds of ritualistic functions to have been performed. You would expect vestments. You would expect lots of other signs. I think this is a very tragic case, one that's not terribly atypical or unusual. I think this is a murder that's perpetrated by some very disturbed young men. And I agree totally with Dr. Levin that these cases are where somebody takes up the identity and wants to be known as a Satanist to condone, to justify what they're doing, which really antecedes, goes way back before anything about Satan. These are disturbed kids who were murderers. This was a mens rea, a criminal mind using Satanism as an excuse.
Jack?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And you don't need Satanism as an excuse. There are plenty of others. You can blame pornography, you can blame drugs or alcohol, or maybe even a bad childhood. But Satanism is particularly easy in terms of a justification because it ritualizes. And, you know, even something as hideous as rape and murder can seem wonderful when you envelop it in this mystery of the satanic ritual.
I neglected to mention the boys were also, two of the boys were also raped.
That's right. And I mean, you know, it's interesting that Satan himself is seen as a powerful figure. And, you know, as Dr. Nyberg points out, these kids probably were very marginal. They probably weren't getting along very well at home, not doing well at school, dropouts, spiritually as well as physically, and felt very, very powerless. Maybe 20 years ago they would have stolen hubcaps. But today, in this age of decline of moral responsibility, you know, they'll do a lot worse than that.
Where the hell do they get the idea, though, to do something this brutal?
You can get the idea in a lot of places nowadays. You can get it in comic books. You can get it by watching television. You can get it from your friends. You can get it from attending a meeting of strangers. But I don't think it's the point that Satan per se is the problem. I think, let me point out, in Clifton, New Jersey, not long ago, 3 guys, teenagers, brutally strangled their buddy while they recited Hail Marys. And Jeffrey Lundgren killed 5 people in 1989. He thought he was a prophet. He kind of like had a direct line to God, he thought. This was a radical offshoot of the Mormon Church. It isn't Mormonism that we blame. And clearly, we don't blame the Catholic Church either. We shouldn't. The point is that religion and also the occult can be used for good or evil. In this case, it's used to justify something horrific.
Your reaction to the father's alibi? The father saying his son?
You know, I'm going to take issue with everybody here. I have to, because, you know, there are a lot of victims of this brutal kind of multiple murder besides just the 3 8-year-old boys. Yeah, I'll tell you who else gets victimized. The family of the, as you can see, of Stevie and the other boys who were brutally murdered. And, you know, sometimes it's also the family of the perpetrator who tries to support and protect his youngster. He may know in his heart that his son is guilty, but, you know, he also knows that everybody will blame him for having created a monster, whether he deserves it or not. So maybe we should be a little bit more tolerant and withhold judgment unless we understand all of the facts of the case.
Okay. Jack, that's a point, though, because what we forget is that you can lead somebody down a path. The ultimate choice and decision, the ultimate responsibility for this murder was not his father. This boy chose to do that, regardless of what those other antecedent causes are.
Let's blame the killers for the crime.
Okay. We have a reporter standing by now in Arkansas who'll give us the latest on what's going on in the case. Jim Taylor, you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, let me take a break. We'll come to Jim Taylor from KAIT in just a minute. Stay tuned. An update on the triple homicide. The trial going on right now. When kids kill kids, did the devil make them do it? Yes.
I want to know, did the children know who their killers were? Like, were they friends? Did the children know their killers? Or like, were they friendly?
Did Stevie know Jessie or Damien or the other fellow, Jason?
Not to my knowledge, he didn't.
Now, as the case has been reconstructed, Paul, was there a stalking of these particular victims?
In testimony, the mother of one of the victims told the court that a month or two prior to the killings, that a man dressed in black had taken a picture of her son, and then during the trial, it was still rather a little bit unclear, but it was, prosecution indicated that there had been a photograph or photographs of the young boys and implied that there was some stalking going on.
Are you there, Jim Taylor?
Yes, I am.
From KAIT?
Yes, I am.
Well, welcome. What's going on?
Today, more jury selection. 5 people have been chosen so far, 1 man and 4 women, and they're looking for 12 people plus 2 alternates. So 14 people have to be chosen, 5 have been chosen, and more jury selection this afternoon and tomorrow, I'm sure.
What's the buzz about Jessie Jr. testifying against his 2 co-defendants?
Well, if you can just give me a moment of time, I can tell you that in Arkansas, the judge in this case appointed a separate attorney to meet with Jessie Jr. to explain what benefits Jessie could receive for his testimony. That attorney met with Jessie Jr. on Tuesday night, and I do know for a fact that Jessie Sr. was with Jessie Jr. whenever those discussions were taking place. There is lots of speculation as to what type of year amount Jessie Misskelley Jr. was offered in exchange for his testimony, but that's a question that I think Mr. Misskelley Sr. could answer, and that's something that a lot of people in our area would like to know. What was the year amount that Jessie Jr. was offered from the prosecution in exchange for his testimony?
Let me ask Jessie Sr., they attempted or are attempting to make a deal with your son to testify against the other 2 boys who are accused of this triple homicide. How many years did they say they would take off his life plus 40-year sentence in exchange for testimony?
Well, I don't think I should tell y'all. I don't think the lawyer would want me to say that.
Is it a substantial reduction in his sentence?
Yes, sir.
So he would be out when? By his middle adult years?
That I don't know.
You don't want to say a 20-year sentence?
No, it's more than that.
Geraldo, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Jim.
I think Mr. Misskelley could give us more insight into what his son was thinking, because he was with his son when the decision process was going on, and we can get a better understanding of Jessie Misskelley Jr., the defendant, if Mr. Misskelley is allowed to elaborate on what they discussed the other night when the offer was made.
You hear him? Dad, why don't you tell us? What were they talking about?
Well, they was talking about telling the truth. And that's what he said he was going to do. He said he was not.
Mr. Misskelley, if I may ask you, sir, is your son holding out for a better deal?
No, he was not. He
Do you
said
think?
that.
Do you think your son will change his mind and testify?
That I don't know. I know one thing. They asked him up there if he could walk out the door right now, would he get up and testify? And he said no.
Why did he say no?
He said because he didn't want to get up there and tell a lie and send somebody to prison or death if they weren't guilty. He said he don't know if they're guilty or not because he was not there.
He still maintains he was not there.
Yes, sir.
But he's willing to testify against the... I'm sorry, Grandpa Jackie?
It was proven in the trial that he was there.
I think
By his own testimony.
that they convicted Jessie Misskelley Jr. based on one thing. That was the confession. There was no physical evidence, none, linking him to the crime scene in any way, shape, or form.
Well, what physical evidence existed?
Very little. Number of hair fibers that we know of, that the investigators will tell us. A few hair fibers and some microscopic clothing fibers.
Jackie, do you have any doubt in your mind that the right guy has been convicted?
Yes, I think the right guy has been convicted. He had all of his testimony. He had any time to back out on what he was saying, and he didn't back out until it came up before trial. And now he wants to back out. His daddy wants to play him ignorant, and everybody else wants to play him ignorant, and it's not ignorant. A man that is not guilty will stand up. He'll stand up. He won't fall in for the police or nobody and confess guilty.
He's not a man, though. He's a 7 or 8-year-old kid.
Is he retarded? Is that what Dad is saying here?
He functions at an IQ level of 72, an overall IQ, so in a legal sense, he is not retarded. Jessie Misskelley, though, it was apparent, is a slow-thinking teenager.
Who was the ringleader, allegedly?
He can think fast enough to do and get out and do what he was doing down there at West Memphis, drinking his beer and carrying on with the other people. So, you know, it's just like Paul said, in the state of Arkansas, mental retardation starts at an IQ of 65. 72, we've all got some mental ability, you know. If you want to holler that, well, then I'm a little bit nuts, too.
Me, too. We'll take a break. When kids kill kids, did the devil make them do it? Stay tuned. Did the devil make them do it? We're examining a brutal triple homicide. 3 8-year-olds hacked to death down in West Memphis, Arkansas. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to know, do you feel that your son may have been involved in the satanic cult itself? Because now kids are very impressionable, and you never know.
No, these kids were 8 years old. There's
Not
no...
a child.
No, sir.
Not
Terry, you want to say something about your son?
Well, we had a honor roll student, 3 years. We had an outstanding little boy, and he deserved better than this.
Do you ever, Pam, second-guess yourself, as so many survivors of murdered children do? Oh, I shouldn't have let him out. Oh, I shouldn't let him walk across town. Oh, I should have kept my eye on him.
I blame myself for
Oh, you
a
can't
while.
do that. You know that's
Well,
right.
I did at first. I blame myself because I let him go, but it's not my fault. I can't take the credit of saying that it's my fault. It's not my fault.
These 3 kids did exactly what any one of your children did that afternoon.
That's
They went out for
exactly
a bike ride in their neighborhood, and they never came back.
Mm-hmm.
For the parents, do you think that justice was served? Do you think that this boy deserves the death sentence, or what would you like to see happen to the one who was convicted?
I'm satisfied with the sentence that he did get, and I don't want them to reduce it to get him to testify. I would rather them, the prosecution and all, to go with what information they do got without him.
We saw the perfect room of a teenager. I'm curious to know, there's got to be other signs of dysfunction that would trigger someone in their mind to say this is someone who's very possible could get involved in a satanic cult. One of my more specific questions is dysfunction, meaning rebellion. You know, you had boundaries for your son. You knew where you sent him. He knew when he was to be back. But to Misskelley, did your son have boundaries, and did he follow his boundaries? Do you know where your son was?
Mr. Misskelley, was Jesse kind of a hellraiser?
No.
Jesse?
No, he was not a hellraiser.
I think I can hear him.
Who else is speaking? Is that your wife sitting by you?
No, it's neighbor.
Okay. Hello, neighbor. You want to say something?
She's the one that babysat, Jesse babysat for her.
You let Jesse babysit your children?
Yes, and I would today.
Are you one of the people who claims you saw Jesse on the night of the crime?
I don't claim that I saw him. I know I saw him.
Did you offer to testify on his behalf?
I did testify.
Obviously, they didn't believe you. Why?
I don't know why they didn't believe me. I told them the truth, and that was the truth. I seen him hit out here at 6:30 that evening, and that's where he was at.
Okay. Terry, you want to comment on what you just said?
I heard a lot of testimony come up there for his defense that was not convincing even to me, and I wasn't a juror.
Now, go back to Paul Morrison there. I want to get to our satanic experts and broaden this discussion, Paul, but what about what the young lady in the first row asked? What about evidence that Misskelley was in some other way, to use that much bandied expression, dysfunctional?
I think you could find that. Matter of fact, his own clinical psychologist in several pretrial hearings said as much. And this was his defense psychologist. And the other two, Damien and Jason, I think you'd find that they too come from what is the politically correct term, a dysfunctional home to one degree or another. But so do a lot of teenagers in this day and age.
Okay, Jack Levin?
I think that's a good point. There are millions of people who've had troubled childhood experiences, and they don't go out and commit these hideous acts. On the other side, I think that we, parents everywhere, have to know that their kids, their teenage kids especially, are being supervised. You know, it's not that that television is responsible for everything, because we were always blaming television. It's that our other institutions, our families, our religion, and our schools have become so weak. We've got to invest as much in our teenagers as we now invest in the stock market.
Let me take a break on that note. Then I'm going to go to Marcos Quinones, a cop here in New York. Ask him what the big city reality is in this regard. Stay tuned. Be right back. Speak Up America, we want to hear your comments and show ideas. Give us a call at 1-900-SPEAK-UP. Let us know what you're thinking. We'll record your message to play in a future broadcast. We may even call you to be a guest on a show. So call 1-900-SPEAK-UP. Don't forget, the call costs $1. We'll be right back. Professor Levin was talking about the decline and fall of American civilization with emphasis on family, church, and school. But not all kids. I mean, some kids given the same opportunity, they do fine, like little Stevie, one of the victims, Pam and Terry's boy. This is his homework from the day he was murdered. In math, he got 100. In cursive writing, he got a star. And in English, he got a very good. And now he's dead, brutally murdered by, well, one 17-year-old already convicted, two others allegedly also responsible. I want to go to NYPD's Marcos Quinones. Is any of this relevant to big city America? Is it relevant to New York?
Yes, I think it is. I think that many children, depending on the lifestyle they have at home and the fellowship with their parents, if they don't have that family structure, will look into something else. I think because of the lack of power that they have, they will turn into Satanism or some other form of the occult. There's so many things out there that will introduce this kind of philosophy. The philosophy is out there. My condolence to the family over this situation. Unfortunately, not all kids will kill or commit suicide with the exposure of satanic material, but you get that one child out of 1,000, all of a sudden